The Italian Wine Podcast is the community-driven platform for Italian wine geeks around the world. Support the show by donating at ItalianWinepodcast.com. Donate €5 or more and we'll send you a copy of our latest book, My Italian Grape Geek Journal, absolutely free. To get your free copy of My Italian Grape Geek Journal, click Support Us at ItalianWinepodcast.com or wherever you get your pods. Grazie mille.
Welcome to this special Italian Wine Podcast broadcast. This episode is a recording off Clubhouse, the popular drop-in audio chat. This Clubhouse session was taken from the Wine Business Club and Italian Wine Club. Listen in as wine lovers and experts alike engage in some great conversation on a range of topics in wine. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinepodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. And remember to subscribe and rate our show wherever you tune in.
Hello everyone, welcome to another installment of Clubhouse Ambassadors Corner. So for today, by special request, we are doing a part 2 of Clubhouse Ambassadors Corner with Tanya Morning Star interviewing Luca Formentini. Because the last time they were headed to a very interesting topic, but we ran out of time. So this is going to be a really nice podcast to look forward to. Since this is part 2, I will go straight ahead and ask Tanya. Hi Tanya.
Hello.
How are you? How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Okay. Okay, so I will be asking you the questions, as you know. So now we have Luca Formentini. Why did you select him as your favorite producer once again?
Well, as you mentioned, we got started on some interesting conversations last time that we wanted to bring back to you. And just kind of as a recap, I think in our last interview, it was really clear how much I admire Luca's authenticity and dedication to crafting wines of meaning and participating in a commitment to community and local culture, as well as the health of our planet through wine. But there's more. So I have some interesting questions for Luca today, and hope that we can explore some of the intersectionality between creativity and wine.
Okay. So how did you discover the wines of Selva Capuzza of Lugano?
Well, I think I mentioned last time, Luca and I met about 8 years ago now, I think, or better part of a decade. I was teaching at a local college here in Seattle, and he came and taught a masterclass. And I think during that time, he was the president of the Lugana Consortio, and he was tirelessly traveling the world teaching about Lugana wines. And so we kept running into each other at every conference. And pretty soon it became a friendship and community and collaboration that I think we both value.
Right. Actually, I remember during the first conversation you guys had, I looked at Luca's profile, and he is here on Clubhouse, and he's a music and wine composer. That is something very interesting, and he's a wine producer. And so now let's talk about the learning objectives that we should be expecting from this interview.
Well, I really want to focus on the correlation between creativity, dynamic thinking, I guess, wine and music. And I think Luca's the perfect person to explore that with.
Okay, so I am going now to mute myself so that you have more time to do the discussions. And then later on, if the audience would like to ask some more questions for Luca, you can actually just type your questions at the room chat here. So that's it.
Awesome. Hi, Luca.
Hello, Tanya. Hello, Laika. Hello, everybody.
It seems like we just saw each other.
Yeah, not a long time ago.
Cycles and time and the vines, my body is still on your time zone.
I understand that feeling.
Well, I'm really happy that we're back so soon to pick up this conversation again, because I think it was just getting interesting the last time we left off. But I want to kind of refresh people that we were exploring what led us to the idea of thinking about timing and creativity was through our conversation about innovation, preservation of traditions, going with the flow and the cycles of nature, indigenous grape varieties and fun subjects like that. Just as we kind of arrive at looking at the intersections of culture, creativity, and our relationship with the natural world through wine, it makes sense, I think, to be talking about other things that you create and bring into this world. So I guess I wanted to begin by pointing out one of the things that I love about your music, Luca, and your wines. And I think that's the fact that you are really committed to curiosity and not dogma. So I find you to have a kind of playful stance in both practices. And I think this gives you flexibility to respond in the present moment. So I'm hoping you can kind of address this approach, and if that approach applies to both of those activities. I'm curious.
Well, yes, I think that you have noticed a very, very important connection between these two practices. And I think that this kind of connection saved my life as a winemaker. Because I'm son to an enologist, and so I've been growing up in the wine cellar with a father who is a scientist of wine. So he knows everything which is happening anytime in the wine, in the grape, and so on. And and that has a lot to do with measurements, with numbers, with the physical reactions. And I remember that until the time I haven't found another way of looking at wine, this kind of approach always looked like very limited to me. Because I was criticizing my father when my father was using the term "this wine is good" as the way that he was giving this kind of judgment to the wine was basically because the wine was properly made. I mean, was not showing any trouble, any bad expression of the aromas or the taste, and so it was basically clean and in balance. And for me, who I am, well, I'm not an enologist. I am not trained by that point of view. I have a very spontaneous approach to wine because basically I think that wine is part of the food culture. I think that anything that we put in our mouth, which becomes a part of us, has to be considered as something very, very important because it is becoming a part of us. So numbers were not enough for me to justify what's quality in wine. And so it was later on when I discovered that wine is something which is very unstable, and it's sort of the result of so many magic combinations and reactions which are not always predictable, they're not always measurable, and this helped me to find my way in the business. So finding that there's this kind of connection with the flow, with something which is happening and it's very difficult to predict, was very, very, very important for me. And this is exactly what I find in music, or at least in the way I think about music, in the way I make my music, which is always a reaction to something which is unpredictable. And by this, you are able to discover things that you wouldn't be able to plan or to organize because you are always facing something that you don't know. And I think that this connection is finding the same way of finding the same elements in what you have to do when you are facing a new harvest with a new ripening condition, with a new temperature, with a different humidity, with so many different variables that we all know who are involved in the wine business can make dramatic differences in the final result.
Well, Luca, you gave me so much to think about, but I just wanted to kind of point out that you're kind of punk rock when it comes to both music and wine. A little rebellious against your father that inspired you maybe towards an opposite stance towards creation.
Well, it's fun because my father has honestly it was brave because he gave me a lot of room to change the direction of our wine company a long time ago, and so I don't know if it was crazy or confident, or probably it was adventurous, but at the same time in a different way that I feel myself adventurous. Yeah, because I think that this kind of connection, this reaction with my father's approach to wine and to life. Well, for example, my father have never had anything to do with music. I never saw my father dance or sing. And while my mother on the other side was a fantastic singer and a lovely dancer. I think it is one of those cases where the limitation creates an impulse, which is taking become aware of what's your position in regarding this firm point. So it was actually very useful. I can say that.
But I also think that, if you look really far back into the history of science, in early Greek scientists, really numbers and music and math and, the cosmos, and we're all kind of woven together in a primitive or early explorations of science. And so in some ways, I think that people who seek to understand through that lens there is a creativity and an experimental nature to that in itself. And I think that's where your winemaking kind of meets in this playful spot, if you will, because last time we were talking about your question mark on the back
Mm-hmm.
of the San Martino della Battaglia bottle to question what you'll have to listen to part one, guys, to figure that out. But also nulla, because most of your wines are really, they reflect actually your father's perspective. They're clean and they really give way to terroir without obscuring it with a lot of fancy winemaking. And so I'm wondering about particularly the approach that you take for most of your wines and why you decided to do this experiment, particularly in what those wines mean in context of each other.
Well, Nulla was another fun time because a few years ago, I think it was like 7-8 years ago, the concept of natural wine was getting more and more familiar and exposed, and so a few people asked me, okay, look, you are so much into sustainability. Why you don't have any natural wine? And okay, we know the subject is very, very complicated. We could talk about that for days, and I'm sure more than days. I'm very happy that European community forbid the use of this term on a wine bottle. And anyway. And I thought, okay, which is my position in relation with the idea of natural wine? And first of all, which is my position as a winemaker, and which is my feeling about what people could expect out of a natural wine. And so I started to do some experiments. I've been talking to Renato, who is my main man in the wine cellar, and I've been talking with Sandro, who is our enologist, and with them I shared my ideas about a few principles that in my mind should be at the base of a project like that. And so the first principle was that the final result had to be enjoyable. If whatever we do the final result is something that we would not like to drink, then we're not going to publish it. And I'm using a very musical term.
Bravo. I just want to
Which
say,
is, okay.
Yes, we should enjoy wine. That's very, very important.
Yeah,
Love it.
so
Yeah.
if the music that we played is not worth sharing, we're not going to release it. And there's no reason to drink a bad wine. And there's even less reason to produce a bad wine. And this was a first point, because I've been tasting many so-called natural wines which were very, very bad, or at least not at my taste. And so the second thing was that we would use no sulfites. The third point was that we would use no yeast, no additional yeast. The third point was that we were not going to filter the wine before the bottling. And then I decided not to buy any new tank to produce this wine. I decided to recover some old concrete tanks of my grandfather. So we restored them, we cleaned them, we painted them. Oh, yeah. And the packaging had to use the fewer possible elements. So I decided not to put a capsule on top of that. I decided to print a very, very simple label. And I used, behind every bottle of our Lugana wines, you can find a circle. The circle is the element which becomes the union point between all our Luganas, because I think that the circle is the natural representation of time in nature. Actually, when I decided to use the circle to represent Lugana wines, I didn't realize how much power that's behind the circle in nature, because at the beginning it was just because of the circles of the years in a tree. When you cut a tree, you see those circles that show how many years the tree. But then I realized that the circles are actually the season, the orbits, the reincarnation, the resurrection, the most powerful shape and geometrical form. And so I was amazed about that, because when you talk about Lugana, you have to think about to a wine which is made better by the time. And so this is the reason why I wanted to have the symbol of time on the top of the Lugana labels. So when it came about making a wine out of Turbiana grapes, which is the grape behind Lugana, I thought about making a hole in the shape of a circle, because the principle of this wine was to take out, was to be as minimal as possible. And so instead of printing of the label, I took out paper out of the label as a continuation of the concept of the circles, but then again as a declaration behind the idea of this nulla, which means nothing, which is a synonym of nothing in Italian. Niente, nulla, same thing. And so we did the first test, and it was, I think, 2018, I think. We were not happy with that. Then we did the second test, which was 19, and that was the first test to be released. And this was a very, very important time, because Nulla began to be a very interesting point to start talking about this subject, about sustainability, about what it means to make wines with the least intervention, with the lightest winemaking technique which could be used. Of course, we're talking about very small quantities. We're talking about 1,800 bottles. But that was the beginning. And it has been a very, very interesting, engaging, exciting, curious adventure. And it is like that.
I have a question. We were just tasting your recent bottling of Nulla Selva Capuzza.
Yeah.
And that one is made from Tuki.
Yeah, we haven't released that yet. So you have tasted something which is not on the market yet. It's going to be on the market after May 23rd, when we're going to do a vertical wine tasting, a very unique vertical wine tasting of San Martino della Battaglia starting from 2001. And there will be a surprise at the end of this vertical wine tasting in Milan with this new Nulla, which is called Oltre Nulla, so beyond Nulla.
Wow, and that's the one that I tasted.
Yes,
that's what
exactly.
You're calling that one. Wow.
Made by Tuki.
Yeah, but the previous experiments were with Turbiana. Is that true? Okay, interesting. So I want to ask you, all of the things you're curious about. And one of those things that I think we talked a little bit about prior to this was about what you learn about the grapes when you let them kind of do what they want to do. So I'm curious what you discovered new about these grape varieties that you've been working with for your whole career through this process.
Yeah, these wines are very useful for us. So they are useful because they are teaching us what happens to those grape varieties. And, we're totally focused on our indigenous varieties when the winemaking is so delicate and with no input almost. It's just output. And this is particularly interesting because the Nulla wines, so both the Turbiana and the Tuki, they're coming from the same vineyards where we're growing the grapes that will become the traditional version of this wine. So they will become the Lugana Selva or the San Martino della Battaglia Campo del Soglio. The first is a Turbiana, the second is a Tuki. And so we are able to compare the same vintage of the same vineyard, of the same grape, picked the same day, and made in two different ways. So one is the traditional making with fermentation with the neutral yeast, and then we have we're cooling the tanks, and then we clean the must, and then it's bottled with filtration and so on, compared to the same grape which goes into a small concrete tank, it stays there. We leave the wine there. We do some batonnage, and then we bottle from the tank without using any filter and without adding any sulfite during all the process. And this is allowing us to understand how far they go from each other. Are we still able to recognize the grape and the basic elements in these two different ways of making the wine? And which is the reference? What do they still have in common and what they don't? And this is so useful to teach us, first of all, the potential of these grapes when they are left to do all the process by themselves, and second, which is the result of the yeast, of the control on the temperatures, on the filtration, and so on. And this is very encouraging. This is encouraging us to push more and more in the direction of allowing these grapes to breathe, to take their own shape, to give them room to express their identity. So these wines are really very interesting for us first, and then they're very interesting for us to share with people like you and with other people who are curious enough to face these wines with a very clean mind. It's not a statement of what's better. It's not a judgment. It's not, we're not saying, okay, this is the real wine while this is not. And we are totally against that, because I think that this is a very sterile discussion when it comes about, deciding on which polarity to place yourself. I'm in between, And I like being in between because I think there's something good on any of these two polarities. And I also like to choose where to go, what to drink, and when.
So, Luca, do you like living in the polarities, or do those experiences that exist on opposite ends of the continuum make you imagine that you'll be making wine differently, more in the middle in the future, possibly?
Yeah, this is another good point, Tanya, because ideally, I think that is the point. So to be able to combine the characters of a wine which has had a very wild fermentation and the solidity that can have a wine which has been produced taking in consideration what the technique allows us to do to preserve the character of the wine. And so, there's a direction in the, let's call it natural wine trend, which sometimes I would say, sometimes too permissive in terms of the weak points that a natural wine can show because of oxidations, because of aromatic elements that are not considered clean. And I think that sometimes we tend to justify too much on that, so that wine has to be good. Otherwise, there's no reason to drink it. And so I think that my way of probably the area in which I will be able to deliver something interesting in the future will be in the middle.
Mm.
And I'm totally against, well, consider, Tanya, that, as you probably have noticed, we are very much doing a very light winemaking. So we are not forcing grapes to express the top of them using techniques which are, shocking the grapes so that they are shouting all of their voice. No, no, no. I love wines which are progressive, which are releasing their identity with time. I hate when wines are made so that they are explosive at the beginning and then they become weak because they spend all their energy at the beginning of their life. I think this is a pity. This is a waste.
So I was just thinking about all the different, I've tried all of the wines that you make for a while now, and I find your experimental wines also to be very clean, as I want to say, and aromatic, maybe a little bit more aromatic, which may have a lot to do potentially with the ambient yeast and use of ambient yeast. But what I wanted to say is that I find your more contemporary wines and your more experimental wines to be two different kinds of minimalism, in a sense, just different approaches to minimalism. And you said, actually, you often take a very minimalist approach in your music and composition as well.
Yeah.
And you said two words that I want to just throw out there and then let you kind of go on that idea, which were addressing inputs and outputs. And so I'm wondering if you can think about those things: minimalism, inputs and outputs, as it relates to your process with wine or music.
You're right. It's in my music, there's a lot of room to what's called improvisation. And improvisation is something which allows me to connect with my spontaneity. It's what we're doing right now. So we're improvising. Anytime we're talking and we're not reading or we're not acting, we are improvising. And we don't know, and this is how I love talking to other people. We never know where our talk will end and what we are going to say next. And this is happening with the way I compose my music. And sometimes these improvisations are telling a story. Sometimes they are creating an arc. Sometimes they're creating waves which go up and down. Sometimes they're very flat, and they show details coming in and out. Uh, but usually the thing which is, or the way that I decide when an improvisation has been successful in a way is how much have I been able to create a connection with the listener, but first of all, of anything else, with myself. How much do I find myself emotionally in the music that I played? And when I say which is my emotional connection to the music, it doesn't have to be related to the moment. Okay, that music is important because I was living a specific time of my life, so it's important because of that. No, I'm talking about the emotional content which was able to be translated in music. Is there a transport? Is there an engagement? Is there a dynamic which is playing between tension and release? Is there something which is able to keep you connected? That is what I mean for a successful improvisation, a successful immediate or real-time composition, and which is again very much connected to wine, and not just to the way you make wines, but also to the way you taste wines.
I was just going to say that, actually. Exactly. I think there's a stance. It's more of a stance than a character trait, being creative or improvisational. It's a way of holding yourself in the moment. And as you were describing your music and compositions, a lot of the same kind of poetic, sensory type language that we use for wine tasting, kind of comes up, which made me think about how we approach tasting. Often in the effort to learn how to understand the structural composition of wine, technically, we lose sight of our body as a tool, as an instrument, really, for an experience, different than the experience of making music or making anything, really. I've lately been kind of playing around as a taster against the backdrop of all the technical things that I know and switching up my approach. Like, I think when we were teaching together, I was playing around with don't smell it first, trying to confuse your brain by taking different patterns in terms to kind of primitive or emotional response to our senses. And I think that's really the same kind of stance that we use when we're making art.
Yeah, you make me think about sleep concerts, or with all those times when we listen to music without watching to the musicians, without looking at them, because your invitation of tasting without smelling first is clearly a super intelligent way to offer people to have an approach which is neutral, the most neutral and spontaneous as possible. But people are not always used to that, because most of the times our perception is guided by something which is in a way coming before our perception. So we are already biased before using our senses to bring the information in and to connect with our personal story. And
also biased, Luca, with anxiety, right?
Sure.
If we already think that we know where we're supposed to be going with something,
Exactly.
Then that's very anxiety producing, and I think gives most people the idea that we're going to not succeed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If we have an expectation of where we're supposed to arrive.
Sure.
before we take a journey.
That's it. That's it. And another connection I find very important between music and wine is how you manage this inside of yourself. So, how much do you allow yourself to be unbiased when you are facing a wine, music, person, whatever? And this is a subject that I love because, and this is one of the reasons which are keeping me connected with what I'm doing, because I'm very curious to learn more about that. I'm curious to hear what other people think about these subjects, because I feel that I have a lot to learn. And I want to learn. I want to grow. And I need people and I need subjects to activate such kind of discussion. So wine is such subject.
We need each other. We need to be doing it in community, or we don't have the same discovery.
Yeah. So the way I think about wine is actually a way to open a discussion, a debate. Let's talk about sustainability. Let's talk about your personal weather and the way that you organize your principles, and you are able to protect your fragilities and your weaknesses, and how much you waste of your energy to protect yourself, and which barriers are you creating to make yourself confident to face the unexpected. So how much are you limiting yourself? And so on. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned, I'm thinking about sleep concert and the things that you're saying, because, you've just said a lot about how much we limit ourselves with our expectations and preconceived notions of things, which is kind of what we're talking about. So for those of you that don't know what sleep concert or sleep concerts are, Luca and I think some of Luca's friends do concerts where people camp out in the vineyards when the weather is good and music is played to them all night. And this is something really interesting for me, because I found at a moment with art that I was so critically minded, able to feel more. I wasn't enjoying enough. And, after going to art school and, always breaking things down, and analyzing things. And so I started to play with purposefully falling asleep when I went out to concerts or movies and things like that, to let myself rest, actually, but still be in the experience. And I thought, it's such a weird thing that I'm doing. Why am I doing this? I'm paying money to putting my head down and nodding off. But I would have these kind of dreams and perceive the art, the music differently, really differently. And it restored me in a way back to a relationship with music and performance and art generally, to let go entirely of even the idea that I needed to be conscious, be experiencing something valuable. Well, first of all, I can't wait to attend one of your sleep concerts, but do you want to tell us anything else about that? Because I just love it.
Thank you, Tanya. Yeah, well, I think I never told you about how I met Robert Rich. Robert Rich is the person who is behind the idea of the sleep concert. Robert is now a dear friend, and he lives in Carmel, in California. And he did the first sleep concert while he was at the university. I think he was like 19, 20 years old. And he began to play concerts of very how can we talk about that music? It's ambient music. First of all, this is the big range of as a genre, and so it's music which is very sparse, very slow, and it allows you to relax and to connect with your breathe and with your emotions. And Robert and I became friends because I discovered that he used to be a winemaker. And so I offered him to taste some of my wines because I was curious to hear what a musician with this kind of approach to music could tell me about the wines I was producing. And it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And I still have his notes. Those notes were really a beautiful gift for me because it was one of the first times when I was able to connect these words, music and wine, which for me have been very, very distant from each other for many years. But I think I told you about that the first time that we recorded this discussion. And with Robert, we released an album 2022, and big news, we're going to release a new album in 2-3 months from now. And so, yeah, the sleep concert began to be very common, not very common, but not so weird subject during the last years. And we see that there's a growing interest in this kind of experience, which is a non-frontal experience of music. So you're not going to a concert where you see musicians playing on stage. Sometimes you don't even see the musicians because the subject is music. And actually, the most important subject is you listening to the music and what happens to you when you listen to the music. And the idea of falling asleep when you listen to a musician playing live at the beginning could sound a little bit weird, like saying, well, what? Sorry. Does falling asleep show a success of the music that I'm listening to? Yes. Yeah, because if you're able to fall asleep when I play, it means that you feel safe. It means that you feel like you are in the right environment to let yourself go. And this is a beautiful gift for us musicians who are wanting to offer something which is not ourselves, which is not something like, okay, come here, I have a few things to tell you. No, it's, okay, please be here. I would like to create the right environment to make you comfortable and be at peace with yourself and be connected with your deep emotions. It's a different approach. I feel lucky when people tell me that they've been able to find themselves by listening to the music I play them. And I think that this is the biggest gift that I can receive after having played my music.
I love that. I think that that's really the same goal in a way that we have as people who imbibe wine, actually, bodies and with something deeper in ourselves through our senses and our mind and our imagination. Obviously, those things go hand in hand. But I think what I want to do now, Luca, is actually do a little free associate, play a little game. Can we do that in the last few minutes?
Sure.
Okay. Now that we're kind of open in our minds, I'm going to throw a word or a phrase, and I want you to music, wine, both, or not. Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. The first word is creative mind.
I would relate it first to music, but also to freedom.
I love it. Okay. It doesn't have to be a long answer. The next one is learning pathways.
Oh, this is life. This is life.
Yes, all things. All things for sure. Yeah. All right. The next one is uniqueness in wine, uniqueness in us.
This is so deep. I think that this uniqueness is dynamic, is not static. This is a subject that I would very much like to underline, because I think that uniqueness is not a goal, is not a starting point is not fixed. Uniqueness as all means to be connected with the pulse, with life inside of you.
Okay. The next one, speaking of pulse, is timing, rhythm.
Renewal. It's always. I remember. I'm sorry. I have such a bad memory. But there's a very important composer. He is still alive, and is very much into repetitive music. I don't remember it was Lamont Young or someone else in that area. And when someone told him, look, this music you're playing is always the same, but at a certain time, you have the feeling that something is changing. The music is changing. And his answer was, yeah, because you can hear you changing. And this is one of the beautiful ideas behind the way we listen to things. Actually, sometimes we're able to listen to loops which are very static in theory, but we start listening and feeling differences because our hearing and our brain and our emotions are getting familiar with some parts of them, of what we're hearing, and so they begin to transform it. And this is something that I love, because I think that to have the perception of ourselves and the instability of ourselves is a beautiful thing.
All right. Cycles, Luca.
Yeah, the same. I would consider the same, because the cycle is something which goes back to the beginning. But even if it's circular, I think about it as something which is moving in more dimensions. So it's not a cycle which is happening on a plane. It's a cycle which can morph in many different dimensions, and so it's not something which is closed. I mean, it is not which is completing itself.
So the last word is restoration.
Restoration in terms of having rest.
So restoration, well, rest does restore us. What returns us to our wholeness or our wellness. Restoration.
Okay, yeah, this is essential, because I see that as an essential element for a true beginning, because it's I see it as a neutral, offering you the neutral starting point. I see it as a way of cleaning things up around you, inside of you. And it is essential, for sure.
That's how we should feel after we dine in a restaurant, restored, right? Cleaned of all the things that were bothering us before, right?
Yeah.
Ideally, through food and wine. So I guess we're just about out of time, but I want to close with one little question, which is sometimes it can be a challenge to bringing our whole selves into all the work that we do, right? So if we consider ourselves to be creative people or historians or whatever our interests are, our loves, our passions, to not compartmentalize ourselves. And that in the wine industry, sometimes I think both of us have felt challenged. But it's clear to me that when people make the choice to kind of authentically bring their whole selves to any situation, that exciting things happen, unique things, and good things. And so I want to ask you, in the years since you feel that you really, in a special kind of way, committed to bringing your whole self to all of your work, what kind of things have changed in your life since you made that commitment?
Well, first of all, my life changed for the good, for sure. So became much more, less rigid, and my relation with people improved in a very dramatic way. But I think that improved because I was more able to recognize, or I was more recognizable by other people, so that it was easier to connect to the right people. And the right people are the people who are sharing some of the important principles that you communicate with or without knowing, and mostly from the actions that you're doing. And so I became more brave in a way, or more confident, to not be afraid of being criticized for not being able to attract confirmations from others. And I think that this paid me much more than what I paid for. And so this created a lot of positivity and more awareness of my limits, and also of what I can offer to myself as a good experience to grow, and to the people around me for a clean connection with what I am, which is something that I'm very much interested in. And I always able to risk something, to be able to deliver a very clear and clean perception of myself, and this paid me with a very surprising and beautiful result.
It's always so fun to talk to you, Luca. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I look forward to our next installment.
Yeah. Anytime. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tanya and Luca. I really enjoyed it. It was kind of leading to a more philosophical and wine and music. So it went deeper, and I really like this conversation. So thank you for the time, and I am going to now close the room. And thank you so much for the listeners here, and we are going to let you know when it's up on Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you, and ciao a tutti. So yeah, and Charlotte Ho actually said that's such a deep and beautiful and authentic interview. Thank you so much, Tanya and Luca. All right, that's
Thank
it for
you.
now. Ciao a tutti.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.